Welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint, where scaling your business gets smarter, not harder. Hosted by Scott Smith, an outsourcing expert with over 20 years of global experience. From India to Alaska to South Africa, Scott's passion for people drives his mission to help you build powerhouse teams created for success. Grab your coffee, your boldest dreams, and your blueprint. It's time to build the business you've always wanted. Let's go.
Everybody, welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. It's good to be here with everybody today, and I'm really excited about our guest today, Brian McMaster, the owner of M&M Quality Solutions, right?
Yes, sir.
And not the candy.
Not the candy, but we let them do our advertising for us.
I respect that. Yeah, that's probably wise. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great. I'm it's a beautiful day in Kansas City, and I think we'll hit 70 today, and we had snow 2 weeks ago, so probably snow next week too. It's the Midwest, so
yeah, that's what you just come to expect it, right?
Absolutely.
That's
you get
funny.
used to it. I love the seasons.
Oh yeah. See, I'm in Arizona, and our seasons are, well, we have two. We have hot and less hot.
Yeah.
Generally.
I was just there recently. Oh, well, I say recently, a couple months ago, because actually my dentist is in Phoenix, believe it or not. There's a story behind that. But I walked out at 3:00 in the morning because I was on, Central Time.
Right.
And I was going to go do a workout, and I felt like I walked into a sauna. So yeah, I get it. I understand.
Yeah. That's interesting. See, now I'm curious about your dentist. I've got a great one that I love, but the one that I used to use that I loved moved to Phoenix, and I'm out in Queen Creek. So, which is, 40, 50 miles away. So,
okay. Yeah. Her name's Nico Loud.
Okay.
And I think she's the best in the country. And that's
clearly.
Yeah, that's why I go there.
Yeah.
She's so a lot of dentists, they go in, they do x-rays, and they say, hey, here's you got cavities, we got to do crowns, we got to do this. And Nico, she does scans of your spine, scans of your bite, tests of all kinds of stuff for mold in your mouth, and basically redesigns your whole entire bite. Designs like for instance, my wife Amber, she had a device made, which was made that day when she was there, and it was a couple $100, and she had headaches from TMJ, and she wore that one night and her headaches went away.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, so, proof's in the pudding, but she's super, super nice. She's got a great team. And, when it comes to your mouth, that's where everything starts. So,
honestly, you can predict so much of your future health right there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely true. That's so interesting, that connection. Nico Loud, huh?
Yep.
We're going to have to tag her in the show notes. I think she deserves a little bit of free press. That's awesome.
Definitely. I think she would like that.
You know what? It's happening now. So,
all right. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's up to me, right? I can make that happen.
Love it. You're in control.
I'm in control. Well, of that. So, all right, Brian, my first real question for you, what is your boldest dream?
I really ironic that you asked that. So my boldest dream, I just told my team this morning that we were in an EOS meeting. I don't know if you're familiar with EOS or not, but it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. That's how we run our business. We were in an EOS meeting this morning, just an L10, not a quarterly or anything like that. And I shared with my group 2 words. One was excellence, and the other one was billion. So my dream is I'd like to create $1 billion company. So that's my boldest dream that I think I've ever had. And for some reason, I woke up this morning thinking about that. And it was like, with the team that we have and the things that we're doing, I think we can get there. So I told my team this morning, I said, these are the 2 words I want you to remember. And they all know I'm crazy already. So they were basically like, yep, we get it. Awesome. We love it. So good stuff.
Wow. That's a bold dream, man.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's fantastic. So, all right. So let me put the pressure on just a little bit. Turn the screws just a hair, right?
I love it.
So, do you have a deadline for it? Do you have a goal date that you're trying to hit?
10 years.
All right.
So I just turned 50 this past year, so I'd be 60 years old. So that's my goal, 10 years. And there's a recipe. I have a kind of a little bit of a blueprint, which is a little bit proprietary at the moment, so I can't share that with you.
Sure.
But I have a blueprint, and I had originally, kind of when I was growing up, I always wanted to run $100 million company, and I didn't know why. It was really about money and things and stuff and that kind of stuff. And
Sure.
after I lost my parents recently, I really started to drive towards purpose, and I really started to drive my company towards purpose. And it's kind of like, what's all this about? What's it for? Why do I want to do this? And I just, I think we're capable of doing it. And, let's say we don't, and we get to 500 million, I'd say that's still a success. So,
That's hard to lose with an equation like that, right?
Yep, absolutely. But it's based around purpose
Yeah.
and purpose and a blueprint. And there's a recipe, people do it. People do it all the time. And, let's face it, millionaire is not the buzzword anymore. It's multimillionaire.
Right.
But I think a lot of people just do it for the wrong reasons. So we'll stick, and that's I'm sure we'll talk about this too, but that's very faith driven as well. And I just have it in my head, and it's in there for a reason. So I'm going to keep driving towards it.
Well, so let's kind of segue into that. So faith, it seems like it really drives your life and your leadership just based on what you just talked about. And I mean, you're talking about, talking to your team, sharing this openly, getting everybody on board, right? And that purpose-driven entrepreneurship is huge. So, I mean, how else does it show up in the way you work with your team, serve your clients, and deal with the ups and downs that come with entrepreneurship?
Faith, is that
Yeah,
how's it show up?
yeah,
So I very simply, by example. So, I believe the more you live like a godly man or woman, as the case may be, the more things happen for you, and the more you're led in a certain direction. A lot of people, they have that inner voice, but they don't know what it is. And to me, that inner voice is God. It's telling me, hey, go this direction. Hey, don't do this. Hey, and some people call it gut too. Gut is, oh, it's my gut. My gut's telling me. I just, as I mentioned, I lost both my parents, and it was within 13 months of each other. My mom most recently to dementia, and I remember watching my mom go through this terrible disease. Fortunately for me, she didn't forget who I was or who my wife was, but she struggled to put sentences together, and she one day it was 4 days before she passed away. I was sitting on her bedside and I was crying, and just kind of wondering, pondering what's everything worth, kind of thing. And she grabbed my hand, and I looked up at her, and she said, I just want you to know God loves you. And I was like floored. So then I'm crying more.
yeah. Oh,
I'm
I
looking
bet.
at I'm looking at my wife, and walked out of there thinking, wow, just in my head, I wasn't really sharing or talking, but just in my head, I walked out, and I was like, wow, there's got to be more to this than cars and boats and houses and money and all this kind of stuff. And she had passed away 4 days later. And I remember a couple days after that going into a quarterly EOS meeting and sitting down with my team and listening to everybody talk about all the buzzwords, quality control, and we deliver on time, and
Sure.
all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this just doesn't jazz me. Well, okay, Brian, what would jazz you? What would jazz me is let's sell this thing in 5 years, and let's make 10 of our employees millionaires. That would jazz me. let's have a purpose.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, we came out of that meeting going from some 3 or 4 paragraph mission statement to simply, we change people's lives as a quasi logistics company, which, we're more than that. But it just really, it really affected me. And I was close to my parents, not as close as I'd like to have been. I wish I would have spent more time with them, but I spent enough time with them, and I loved them. And, I know they love me, but it just really hit me hard. I was like, man, what am I doing all this for? So it changed my life. It really changed my life.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So first of all, my condolences. I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Thank
You
you.
know, I'm big on life as a tapestry, right? So, and I'm a huge believer that we weave our tapestries through our lives, through our choices and even through some of the things that we experience or that happen to us. But I'm also, a big believer in like Stoic philosophy, where, for example, the concept that things don't necessarily happen to us, they happen for us, right? And something like that, losing your parents, having that experience with your mom, can absolutely help redefine and reshape the direction of your choices and the things that you want to accomplish in your life and in your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very impactful. And going back to the faith piece, if there are reasons, there are things that happen to you, and you either see them and embrace them, or you don't. And the challenge today is there's so many distractions that we're in our phones, we have social media, we have news, we have all this stuff that we really forget what life's all about.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not about working 9 to 5 or starting businesses and that type of stuff. It's really about people and relationships.
Right.
So
Those other things really are just tools, right? That we can employ to help make those other things that we really need to do, like connect with people and serve people, come to life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. And so for me, that's where faith fits into a business strategy concept for me. Similarly, I have dreams for my business, right? For my consulting business, things that I want to make happen. And one of those things is, I love to employ people. I love to create opportunities for people. And, I'm an outsourcing consultant, right? So whether that employment and opportunity happens here, like in my immediate vicinity, in my family, in my friend base, somebody here in Arizona, or somebody across the world, we're all God's children, right? And so we work together to love and serve and care for each other. At least I think if we do it right. And,
Absolutely.
and that shows up in our faith and how we exercise our faith and how just every little thing that we do, because faith is an action term, right? It's not just a concept. Faith
Sure.
means we're all in, baby. We're taking action.
And that's when I noticed the biggest difference for myself too, along those same lines, is when I give it all over to God. When you surrender and say, you know what, it's in your hands, it's your business, it's your people, it's all in your hands. There's a peace that comes with that I had never experienced. And it's just recently that I've really started to dig into that. And I mean, I always I have this saying, in the end we win. So, it's like it really doesn't matter what happens right now. And as soon as I did that, things just started to change for me. I mean, stress levels reduced, problematic things don't affect me the way they used to. I mean, it's really about surrender, and it's really about faith.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
love
good
that.
stuff.
So, all right. So we've talked a little bit about, M&M and, entrepreneurship and really building out of service and, and love, right? So tell us a little bit about the journey that got you on the path to building up M&M Quality Solutions.
Wow. Well, it's a long story. So I'll try to give you the abridged version. But my my uncle, who is my mentor, his name's Pete Leonhardt. Um, he owned a business that supplied functional accessories to Harley Davidson, and that was back in Pennsylvania where I grew up. And he invited me when I was really young. I think the earliest recorded time card I have, I was 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, $2.10 under the table.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was really really cool. But he taught me business. He, went in, I cleaned machines, and one day I was 15, I picked up a MIG gun and I could weld. So I was welding when I was 15. Had a brand new car when I was 16. Had meetings at Harley Davidson before I could even drive. Just
Wow.
yeah, it was really cool. I was literally, there was a time when I was delivering parts to the assembly line at Harley Davidson in a 24-foot box truck, and I didn't have a driver's license. So you talk about doing what you need to do to get the job done. That's what we did. And through those relationships, I met what would be my future business partner. He started a consulting business, and he was doing some consulting with Harley. He used to work for Harley. He left and started a business. He was doing some, fast forward, 15, 20 years. He was doing some consulting here in Kansas City at their assembly plant. And I ran into him. Again, long story, a lot to this, but I was not doing very well at the time. But I always remembered my uncle told me never show people your cards, so I didn't. And I said I was doing really well, and he ended up moving me to Kansas City. And I started doing some repping inside the Harley Davidson plant. And his last name was McElroy, and mine's McMaster. So about 6 months after I got here in Kansas City, we were using a sort and rework company. Shout out to, they're no longer in business, but Grifco Quality Solutions. They were doing some business with Harley, and this was 2003, and they weren't doing a very good job. So I called up Scott and I said, "Hey, I got an idea, but I'm not going to do it unless I own 50% of the business." So he's like, "Okay, go ahead, shoot." So we created M&M Quality Solutions, and M&M, obviously McMaster and McElroy. Sure. M&M quickly outgrew his company, and 2010, I ended up buying him out. And we were doing quality control for Harley. We were doing quality control for some other people, but Harley was pretty much 98% of my business at the time. Yeah, it was pretty scary. And, one day they asked me if these parts I was inspecting, I could store them. Can you store them for us too? So I went out and leased a warehouse, 17,000 square feet, not too far from where I'm sitting right now. And kind of the rest is history. I was in the warehousing business, had no clue what I was doing. I was just trying to, make the numbers work and keep relationships, which I'm really big on.
Yeah.
And about 8 years ago, I hired a president for the company, and he took us in a pick, pack, and ship fulfillment direction. And that's really how I ended up where I am today. That's the bulk of our business. Harley's still a client, but they're about 3% of my business now. So that was a big swing.
Yeah, that's a huge swing. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So made a lot of relationships along the way. I still keep in contact with a tremendous amount of people that, throughout my career, but I have a lot of funny stories. I'm actually in the process of writing a book. So yeah, that's another one I wanted to tell you about the other day.
Yeah.
I always figured I'd put these. I'm trying to think of whether I want to call it Confessions of an Entrepreneur or if I want to title it different.
Interesting.
So we'll see. We'll see.
It sounds like it'd be a great read. Just from the little bit that I've gotten to know about you, the couple of times we've talked.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really believe I have a lot to share. And we talked about purpose. I think ultimately, I got 50 years under my belt. So for the next 50 years, I think what I'd like to do is help young, aspiring, or even older aspiring entrepreneurs not make the same mistakes that I did. And I think there's a big need for that. There's a lot of consultants and a lot of coaches and, that kind of stuff. But really, really helping people not make the same mistakes is I think a passion of mine.
You know what? I think that's brilliant. I think that would be a great way for you to be able to serve and, great stuff to put into a book. I mean, dear heavens, every entrepreneur goes out there and thinks, I'm going to take the world by storm. Everybody needs me. And then they realize, wait, nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
Nobody has any idea who I am or what I even do. And
Well, and the other thing is risk, right? The probably one of the biggest, um, from my standpoint, probably one of the biggest things that is a drawback or maybe a fault of young entrepreneurs is the soon as they fail, they don't go back to the well. It's like, oh, I failed. I'm not an entrepreneur. I should go get a job. And maybe that's true. You really do need to be realistic, but the successful entrepreneurs are the ones that fail but pick themselves back up.
yep.
We have a saying in Taekwondo: 7 times down, 8 times up. If you don't get yourself back up, you really don't have another ticket to the show. So
Yep.
it's so important. I have a favorite. I don't know if you call it a quote or a saying, but entrepreneurs jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down.
That's
So
so true.
yeah, it's it definitely sums up what entrepreneurship is. But the other thing too, Scott, I hired employees, team members, over the years. One gal, she got arrested. The FBI showed up. She was printing fake IDs in her garage.
Oh my goodness.
I had another guy using his cell phone for an inappropriate business and didn't understand why. And so these are the things that they don't print in business books or teach you in business school.
Yeah, people do people things. They don't talk about
Exactly.
that.
Yep. The world
Yeah.
needs to know.
Yeah, oh, heavens, yes, the world needs to know.
Yeah.
So, the concept, the Taekwondo concept that you talked about there, that's something that my father instilled in me. My whole life was, son, just get up one more time and you get knocked down. Unless, no, I'm not going to say this right. You don't lose if you get up. Just get up one more time. That's always the key. And I have taken that deeply and personally. It's very much part of who I am. My brother lives out in West Virginia, and he and I talk about this all the time. And it's one of those things that Pop instilled in both of us, and that's you got to keep getting up. Don't stay down because that's the surest way to lose is to stay down. But if you don't quit, you don't lose. You
Yeah. It's hard
know.
hard to fail if you don't stop.
Well, yeah, and so I mean, even failure, that kind of stuff's going to happen, right? You're gonna run out of money. You're gonna, blow it big time on an important client.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like that's going to happen, and it happens in every business, right?
Yeah.
But then what do you do about it, right? That's really the key.
And most times, I think this is probably a Napoleon Hill thing. One of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich.
Sure.
But I'm pretty sure this is Napoleon Hill who said this, but it's just beyond the worst failure that the greatest success is found. And when you stop, he has a saying, I think it's 6 inches from gold. And it was story about a guy who was, he hit the largest gold mine ever, and then it dried up, and he stopped, and he was only 6 inches away from the largest ever. I mean, those kind of things really drive me and shape me, because if you don't look failure in the face, or you don't look, trials in the face, and just push through, you can't really enjoy success.
Right.
So yeah, it's that's motivating right now. I feel like doing something.
Let's go, baby. Let's go do something. I wish I was out there instead of here. We'd go do something.
I love it.
You know what? That's awesome. All right. So let's see. You know what? I used to work in a warehouse, and I think I was 18, just about to turn 19 years old. I was working a temp job out here in the desert. You know, we were doing evaporative cooler pads and evaporative cooler motors. And it was this big giant where I don't remember how big it was. I was a kid, you know, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just like, oh my gosh, this place is huge. And, you know, we had a little bit of an assembly line. I was slow. I didn't get the concept. I frustrated one of my teammates a lot because he was just like, boom, boom. The dude was quick, you know, and I didn't grasp the concept, you know.
Sure.
But I remember being in the warehouse and I remember the experience of being surrounded by, I mean, just the sheer volume of equipment and supplies and, you know, being asked to do something with them. Well, then when I went off to college eventually, the best job I ever had was at my university bookstore. I was a stock clerk but we weren't stocking shelves in the store. We were fulfilling orders and then delivering them around campus and around the city, right? And so, man, I would monkey climb the shelves, you know, to get whatever I needed to get off the top. That's not the safest thing to do, by the way, for anyone who's listening.
Yeah, back when OSHA wasn't really prevalent, right?
Right? It wasn't that big a deal, but man, for me, it was the fastest way up and the easiest way down, you know.
Hmm.
And I was young and dumb and strong, and you know, I wasn't that stressed about it at the time. But it was such a great environment. I loved the physical aspect of it, and I loved what we were doing, that I was getting to interact with people and doing things that, you know, I got to kind of serve them in a way because I was helping them out with whatever it was that they had ordered, that they were trying to get. And as silly as that may sound, I loved that. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
No, it sure does. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not the most glamorous thing in the world to work in a warehouse, but again, it goes back to purpose. And you know, we just we talk about trials. We just had a customer recently, very very good customer, and they're new. And you know, box went out, shipment went out, and it didn't end up in ideal situation when it got there, and it was partially our responsibility. And you know, we just had a coaching moment with our people, and you know, it really boils down to purpose. It's like, hey, imagine you're shipping this to your mom. You know, your mom's opening this box, or you're opening this box. You know, you want to have an experience, regardless of what it is. You want to have a good experience.
Right.
And, you know, I think when you start charging your people and your team members with that purpose of thinking about it as, I'm not just putting something in a box and shipping it out the door, I'm really extending who we are to whoever's going to open this box, it becomes a different experience. And,
Right.
you know, that's what we try to do here. And it doesn't always work. I mean, you know, the big thing we try to do is make sure we have the right people in the right seats and, you know, that type of stuff. And there, you know, let's face it, there are people who are not enthused about coming to work, and there are people who are really enthused about coming to work.
Sure.
So we do our best to, you know, make it a good experience for everyone. But it really just boils down to, if you want to enjoy your job, we're trying to make it more enjoyable, but it really has to have purpose behind it.
Yeah, see, and you empower people. I love that. You empower people with that purpose. So, you know, you say that better than I do. So I spent a lot of years working in India. And for a while, I was running for a former employer. I was running our operations, living just outside of New Delhi, and, you know, building out and growing the team that we were building there in a few of the different cities around the country. And it was a really interesting exercise in our own logistical setup because there's, you know, between software and training and making sure that everybody is doing the things in the way that we needed them done, the way that our customers expected them to be done, there was a lot, right? And a lot that goes into that, even for that. And it was interesting because, you know, we would get people trained. And then one of the things that I realized, and this is where it ties into what you just said, one of the things I realized was when I connected them to the end client experience, when I made that personal, which is what you just described, what happens if you're opening, if your mom's opening this box? And it doesn't matter if it's a box, it doesn't matter if it's an IPO document, right? Who
Sure.
there's somebody on the end who's getting the end result of that work, and we're really serving them, right? And everything that we do matters, and everything we do is important, you know. And in India, one of the things that I learned was that, you know, they say that customer is God and that work is worship, you know. And it's an
Wow.
interesting perspective, yeah, when you view, you know, the work that you do as a way to worship. And it just really makes you think about what talk about purpose, you know, about what you're doing every day and how you're doing it. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really good.
it's
Hmm.
interesting.
Love it.
So, all right, I want to talk about this thing. So, one of the things that, and I think I pulled this from, might have been from a podcast that I listened to that you were on. If you want to grow, you've got to let go, right?
Yes. Um, that's a boy, that's a that's a big one to unpack. Um, so a mentor of mine told me that at one point, and what was happening was my business was growing, but I had the mentality that if I want to get it done right, I have to do it myself. And I didn't have a lot of faith in people. There were I was hiring the wrong people, and really what it boiled down to was my own fault. I was hiring the wrong people. I wasn't hiring properly. But I have that entrepreneur ego, right? So I know better than everybody else,
Amen.
and uh, I just got to a point where I was so frustrated, which is where a lot of entrepreneurs get to, right? They get to that point where it's so frustrating for them, and then they end up selling it to someone else who builds a team and takes it to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
So, which you know, it is more common than most people think. But I had a coach tell me one time, I think it was a Tony Robbins elite coach that I had. I've done a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, and he said to me, he said, Brian, here's the deal. This is the bottom line. If you want to grow, you're going to have to let go. And I just remember being floored. Like, wow. He said it at the right time, God lined up everything, whatever. But it really hit me. And I was like, wow, boy, you are so right. If I don't let go of this stuff, I'm not gonna. Now, you got to manage through it, right? So I've been through teams and people, and you
Sure.
know, I've the hiring and the firing and the all that type of stuff. And finally at 50, I think I figured out that portion of it. but but it took a while. Um
I'm knocking
but
on wood for you right here because,
yeah. Thanks.
right.
Um yeah, so it was just an epiphany for me. It was like, wow, you're so right. I'm not going to be able to do this all myself. And that's a credit to a lot of the teams that I've worked with. I'm fortunate and blessed enough to work with the best team that I've ever worked with. And you know, it's a credit to them. It's a credit to the process. It's a credit to all of us learning and sacrificing. But man, you know, when I look back on that statement, I still use it today, and I still tell entrepreneurs when I'm coaching, I still tell them that. So yeah, you want to grow, you got to let go. So
You know what? Such an important lesson. And you know, coming from Tony Robbins, his stuff is gold, right? It really is gold.
yes,
He's got a lot of good stuff. Quick Tony Robbins story I will share with you. Not everybody in the world knows this. So, bro, if you're out there listening, my brother Bill, this is your story. I'm sharing it with the world. So, years ago, when Tony first came out with his like very first program, Personal Power, right?
yep,
My brother was in grad school and he was working on his master's program, uh, trying to get his thesis done, and he was struggling, right? So he's up late one night, sees this infomercial, and buys the program, right? And it
yep,
was on cassette tape, right? So
yeah,
So he's listening to the tapes and, he gets through, gets the thing done. And then he gives me the tapes. And he says, hey, you know, you should listen to this program too. It's really solid. So I started listening to it. Well, he gave them to me. And then Tony Robbins, because he wasn't really Tony Robbins yet, called him
Ah,
himself. He said, hey, this is Tony Robbins, and you bought my program. How's it working for you? And he was
wow.
like, oh, it's been amazing. It helped me get my thesis done, and it was fantastic. And in fact, I gave it to my brother, and he said, oh, thank goodness you did. Thank you for gifting that to him. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not worried even if I get, paid for who doesn't order or whatever. I'm just so glad that it was helpful for you and that it's going to be helpful for him.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins, he's not for everybody, but people love him or they hate him. There's a lot of people out there like that today, right? I mean, if they're not polarizing, are you really even having that big of an impact,
Sure, sure.
But yeah, it was pretty cool.
I've that's a great story. I've done all of Tony's programs. I have all of his tape programs. I was actually 2001. I was in Fiji at his resort, Namali.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it's called Date with Destiny now, but at the time it was called Life and Enterprise Management. And there were 65 people there, so I had 15 minutes one on one with Tony every day. And I wished I would have listened to more of the stuff then that I do now,
Sure.
because I mean it was just an incredible experience. I've done his firewalk, his UPW. I've done that 7 times.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I would use the firewalk as I gotta go do 4 days in depth with this guy and get back on track. And yeah, exciting, incredible delivery. And those who know Tony doesn't have a whole lot of his own original stuff. He takes other people's stuff and he just markets very, very well. And Jim Rohn was his mentor,
Yeah.
and Jim Rohn was phenomenal. So yeah, Tony's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great story. And that's so good that you've been able to do so many of those programs. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's another big thing too, is working on yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, first you got to have faith, but then you got to really take your vehicle and make it better, be improving every day. So I've always really looked for, people that are out there that could help influence me. And if it's one, like you said, some people Tony Robbins is for them, some people he's not. And I would always go to his seminars, and there were things that I didn't like and I didn't agree with, and I
Sure.
just wouldn't go away with those. I would go away with the things that made an impact on my life.
Yeah.
And I think just that self reflection and working on yourself is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to work on yourself. That's that deep work that you do. And I mean, it's all inclusive, right? So when you work on your body, you work on your physical self, you have to do that, but you also have to do soul work, and you have to improve yourself as a business person. You have to
Absolutely.
make sure that you're focused on everything that you can. And, some people get overwhelmed when they realize that there's so many things that they have to do. And so I just try to, when I coach people, I try to stop them and I say, okay, overwhelm doesn't have to be a thing for you. I get it because I get overwhelmed, even knowing the things I know and doing the things I do. I'm a person, right?
Sure.
But just break it all down. It's all little bite-sized chunks. Don't try to eat the whole thing at once. Just take it a bite at a time, one little step at a time. And sometimes you have to keep taking that step or taking that bite till you get it, and then you can move to the next bite. But don't try to eat the whole thing at once
Yeah.
because that's not how growth and improvement's going to work.
I blame Jeff Bezos for that. He created the Amazon effect where everybody needs everything right now. Like the first day I ordered something and it was supposed to be there same day and it didn't show up and I was upset. And then I sit there and I go, wow, um, you know, 20 years ago this would have taken 4 weeks to get to me. And now I'm upset because it's not here in 8 hours,
Right.
and so everybody, it's immediate gratification. I want to take a pill and get slim. I want to take a shot and be healthy. I want to, but to your point, and I read a great book. The author escapes me, but Atomic Habits. Um,
James
fan,
Clear.
there you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. Just do one thing. I want to work out. Well, you don't have to do a 2-hour workout. Just get up and say, I'm going to do 5 minutes on the treadmill. You'll never do 5 minutes. You'll do 25 minutes.
Right.
Just small things. So I agree with you 100%. I run into that a lot because I have a crazy morning health routine. And, a lot of people will be like, oh, it's just so overwhelming. And there's so many supplements and there's so many people to listen to. And I always say, just pick one person that you trust and that you enjoy their information, stick with them. And then, do little, I'm going to add vitamin C, or I'm going to add a multivitamin or something. Don't try and do everything at one time, because then you don't even know what's working. So, I share that sentiment 100%. Just
Yeah.
small bite-sized pieces.
Yeah. That's really what you have to do. So listen, man, you and I could probably, I feel like, talk for, a day and not
Sure.
run out of things to talk about. And I have, my list of questions that I wanted to get to, but I want to kind of move toward a close, in large part because I have a call in about 10 minutes. So
Sure. No
I
worries.
just want to make sure that I'm on time for that. But so e-commerce, right? E-commerce has exploded. And it's funny because you talk about the first time you get upset when something, doesn't show up same day. That's so relatable. It's so real.
Yeah.
And I think you and we grew up at a time when, most problems could be solved in 22 minutes, not including commercials, right? And
Yeah.
that whole sitcom era, right?
Sure.
And now with the advent of social media and how things have grown up, Instagram, TikTok, people are which I mean, they're tools, right? They're tools that people use, but it has an effect on people's mental health. It has an effect on their expectations. They see people living the glamorous life. They don't recognize the real grind and how dirty you end up getting when you get down there to get the work done,
Sure.
or all the work that goes into it. So how do you do that? One, how do you do that and grow? And then two, with the way e-commerce is exploding, that's got to be good for you and your business. So
Yeah,
what
sure.
trends do you see, coming out, that things that you might be watching closely?
Well, first of all, there are tons of people in our industry. There's, I always, I don't know if these statistics are exact, but 80% of our competitors are one location, and they're mom and pops, or they're $1 million businesses maybe. And then the other 20% are the big guys, the Walmarts, the Amazons, and I don't want to be a Walmart or an Amazon. And the reason I don't want to be that way is because instant gratification is one thing, customer service is a totally different thing. So, and anyone who knows, if you've ever tried to get a hold of Amazon on the phone, anyone knows that that's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's even a more difficult experience. So, yes, it's exploding, but my focus and my purpose is more in the health and wellness space, and less in, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 orders at a time. It's more in a customer centric, customer focused. Yes, I want to deliver to you in the time frame that you want to, but I want to take care of the people that can call me if they want to and talk to me, or talk to one of our customer service people.
Sure.
So relationships are big for me. And, relationship marketing. I would rather have someone who has 10 good relationships than someone who makes 1,000 phone calls a day. So, it's just a very different mentality. And yes, it is blowing up, but I'm just trying to carve out my little piece. So, It's an exciting time,
Yeah.
and when you're good at what you do, you can usually choose who you want to do business with. So,
You know what? That's true. That's an excellent point. You get more choice, more opportunity when you're good at what you do, and people want to work with you. You know,
absolutely, yeah,
absolutely true. So I think we've already talked about what the big mission is coming for the next chapter. You got big goals in the next 10 years.
yeah.
Um, Tell people how they can get a hold of you or learn more about M&M Quality Solutions.
Yeah, so our website is www.mmqualitysolutions.com. Certainly do some research on there. Happy to give out my email as well. It's brian@mmqualitysolutions.com. And for any of your listeners that have any questions or anything about entrepreneurship, or I'm happy to help. I love to talk about that kind of stuff. I have a chief of staff. She's amazing. She'll get you to me because things are quite busy these days. But
Sure.
I'm happy to help. That's why I'm here. Like I said, I want to use the next 50 years to really give back. So
Yeah, love that. Is that
yeah.
Rhonda, Chief of Staff?
That is Rhonda. Yeah,
Shout out to Rhonda.
yeah, she's been a life changer. I'm the guys in my entrepreneurs group always used to joke with me. I'm the only guy that runs an 8-figure company that doesn't have an assistant. And I don't like the word assistant. So we named her chief of staff, and yeah, she's aces. Now everybody was worried about her being busy, and now she needs an assistant.
You know what, man? That's how it goes. When you do it right, that's how it goes.
Yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Brian, thanks for taking time with us today. I really appreciate it, man. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, same. I appreciate it as well. You take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Everybody, this has been another episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. Till next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. If today's episode brought you value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to take their business to the next level. Follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube at Akata Consulting for more tips, insights, and updates. Or to join our free school community, the Outsourcing Blueprint. Until next time, keep dreaming bold, building big, and outsourcing smarter. Let's go.